This is what you'll see when you first open Access. It appears to be empty, but if you look on the left side of the screen, you'll see that there are sections for all of the tables that this database contains and some queries that I've already run and saved if you'd like to look through those. I think that the most important thing to do when you open a database for the first time is to visualize all your tables and the fields they contain and the relationships that those tables have with each other. In order to do that, you'll move over to the Database Tools tab, click that, and then click on this Relationships button. So now you should see all of the tables that are located in this database and how each table is related to each other. You can see in my site description table to the left of site ID is this little key logo that's indicating that the site ID is my primary key for this table. And then if you follow these relationship lines, you can see that in the sample event table, they're related to each other at that site ID location. And then in my sample event table, you can see this primary key is sample ID, and it is related to the thermal stress table and the cover table through that sample ID. If you want to manipulate and be able to see what's going on in your tables better, you can go to the bottom right-hand corner of each table and double-click it. That will expand it to the maximum size of each field. Or you can just go to the bottom right and click and drag it so that you can move the table so you can see everything better. Now that I have an okay understanding of what my data looks like, I am ready to ask a question of it. In order to do that, I'm going to run a query, and I'm going to come up to the top left, click Create, and then click Query Design. When you first open a query, it will automatically select a select query. That is what we want to run. And we're going to be in the design view for this query. So the first thing we have to do is populate it with tables. So I'm going to click the site description table over here on the right. I'm going to double click it, and it should populate over here. I'm also interested in the sampling event, so I'm going to double click it. It's populated. I'm interested in the ocean name. I'm going to double click that table. And I'm also interested in the country name. I'm interested in the coral cover. And I'm interested in the temperature information that's located in the thermal stress table. I find this view to be a little bit confusing, so I'm going to spend some time to spread the tables out so that they're a little bit more understandable. To do that, you can just click and hold and then move each table around. I'm also going to expand the tables again so that I can see all of the fields in each table. To do that, you hit the double click at the bottom right corner or click and drag. Okay, I am now ready to start populating my tables or my query with the fields in each table. The first thing that I'm interested in is the exact location in space of each site, and that'll be from the latitude and longitude degrees fields. So I'm going to double click latitude degrees, and you should now be able to see it in the bottom. If you could also click and just drag if you wanted to do it that way. I don't right now want to have two of the same thing in my query, so I'm going to delete one of these two. In order to do that, you click this little white bar right above the field, and then you just hit your delete key, and now that should be gone. The next field I'm going to add is longitude degrees. So now I know where in space each site will be. I'm also interested in the ocean name. I've got something called lookup tables, which you can see here in country name and ocean name LUT. This is just a design technique so that users entering new data can't misspell ocean names or country names, so I don't have a bunch of misspellings of the same thing. And so I'm going to click ocean name from the ocean name LUT, double clicking that to populate it at the bottom, and then the same thing for country name. I'm interested in when this sampling event took place. So I'm going to move over to the sample event table, and I'm going to add the date, day, month, and year. And then I'm also interested in the depth. So I'm going to add that field. My question that I posed earlier was looking at hard coral cover globally. So I'm going to add the percent hard coral cover from the cover table. And then I'm also going to add the climb SST field from thermal stress. This way I can look at the global coral cover and how it might be affected by temperatures. I am now happy with the fields I've added. If you can't see all of the fields across the bottom, you can use the scroll bar to look at the extras down here, this bottom scroll bar. So now I want to run this query. You can either hit this run button. That'll show you the data sheet view of your data. So this one will look more like what you're used to in Access or in Excel. If you're interested in looking at the code that was generated when I ran this query, you can come up to the top left and hit this little arrow below the view button and click SQL or SQL view. This shows you the code that was created. You could create queries in this view if you know SQL or SQL. I'm going to go back to the datasheet view. You could do that by just clicking this datasheet button, or again, you could click this arrow and then hit datasheet view. If I decide that maybe I'm only interested in the Pacific Ocean, I can restrict this query to show me only those sites that are found in the Pacific Ocean. To do that, I'll go back to this design view. You could click the ruler button, or you again could click this little bottom arrow and then hit design view. And now I'm going to restrict so that I can only see sites from the Pacific Ocean. To do that, I'm going to drag this scroll bar back so that I can see the first few fields. And then in this criteria field down here, under ocean name, I'm going to type in quotes, Pacific. This has to be spelled correctly. If you misspell it or don't capitalize the P, it will not populate with anything. I can show you an example of that. Actually, it might show you. Yeah, okay, capitalization does not matter, but misspellings do. So if I forget the A and I wrote Pacific, nothing will populate. So make sure that you spell it correctly. Capitalization does not matter. So I'm going to look back in the datasheet view, and now I'm only seeing sites from the Pacific. If I'm also only interested in the sites in Australia, I could restrict that as well. Or if I'm only interested in a certain year of sampling, I could restrict that. You can make a bunch of different queries looking at your data that way. Now that I'm happy with the query that I have, I can export it into Excel so that I can then put it into R. In order to do that, I'll click this external data tab up here at the top, and then I'll click the Excel logo. This will open a export window. You'll want to make sure that you save this to a file path that you recognize and you'll be able to find. You can do that by hitting browse or directly typing in your file path. And then you'll want to save a name that you'll easily find. So I ran a Pacific Sites query, so I'm going to title it Pacific Sites query. It'll only save as an XLSX or variations on that. It won't save as a CSV. So I'm just going to leave it as an XLSX. And then I like to click export data with formatting and layout and open the destination file after the export operation is complete. You don't need to do these, but the second one is nice because the second it finishes exporting, it'll just pop up an Excel window. So I'll click OK. We'll close that. And then you'll see that the query that I just ran is now here in Excel. And you could save this as a CSV and then pull it into R and run any analyses you might want. And that's how you run a query.